Oh, the last meeting, no gavel. I was actually going to use it for.
What on earth?
I know.
Yeah, you guys are-
Anyway, we'll go ahead and call to order the June 30th, 2025 Board of Directors meeting for the Columbian 9-1 Communications District. Board members present, we have Shelley Hennessy, Henry Heimuller, Brian Tiani. I believe Jeff Flatt is online, correct?
Correct.
Jeff is here, yes.
And Rob Anderson for staff.
Brian Burright, interim executive director for the day.
Vicky Nichols, Chief Financial Officer.
Danielle Hooper, Operations Manager.
Mary Jo Beck, Office Support Specialist.
Parks Levine, Technology and Facility Specialist.
Nathan Hughes, Tech Manager.
And we have Chandra Egan attending online.
Perfect. And for online attendance, I see we have
We additionally have, Vlad, of course,
a member of the public.
Mark Jacob,
Oh, there's other ones we can't see. Okay,
Mark Pacheco with Columbia County.
got it. Thank you. Yep, and audience. Perfect. We'll start for public comment. We'll go first, for those who are here in person. Is there any public comment? Nope. Have online, any online comments?
I do have a question really quick. This is Tyler.
A question, sure, go for it.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, sorry, I'm trying to get to the section here. In the chapter 4 district board or the district policy, it says that newly elected members will be able to participate in the meeting. Is it your intention to be able to allow Mark and I to chime in on the different topics that you folks are talking about at that time?
Discretion of the board. Historically, I don't recall that being the case.
I don't think it has been historically either. I don't have a particular problem with it personally, other than the executive session piece, which I think is prescribed by law.
All right, Shelley?
I don't have an opinion. I don't have any issue other than agreeing with Henry on the executive session part.
Perfect. Well, if mine is looking it up real quick, if that is what that section says, I guess we'll go ahead and stick with it. So the answer to your question is yes, with the exception of the executive session.
Thank you.
Are there any additions to the agenda? Hearing none, for approval of the May 22nd, 2025 budget hearing and regular meeting minutes.
I'll make motion to approve the May 22nd minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded as a slate to approve the May 22nd, 2025 budget hearing and regular meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Passes. Financial reports.
Hi, good morning. Our benchmark for May 31st, 2025 should be or is 8.33%. And we are currently at month end for our general fund at 26.2%. There were a couple of voids on the check register. Other than, or I think there was just one. Other than that, was there any questions on any of the documents?
Entertain a motion on approval of the budget variance as presented.
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to approve the budget variance report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Sorry. Jeff, that was an aye, yay or a nay?
Aye. Yay.
Yay. Perfect, thank you. I went a little too fast, sorry. Expenditures.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the expenditures list as presented.
There a second? Been moved and seconded to approve the expenditures as presented. Is there any discussion? Again, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. Next on here, we have resolution 25-02, 2503, and 2504 for adopting the budget, making appropriations, declaring and levying and categorizing taxes.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve resolution 25-02 in the matter of adopting the budget, making appropriations, declaring a levy, and categorizing the taxes provided for in the 25-26 adopted budget as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. Operations report.
No. Staffing updates. My last report that I brought you had 4 in training. We did lose one that just didn't meet the training requirements, and we wished him well. The remaining 3 are still progressing and doing quite well. As of today, we're actually going to be launching the rolling recruitment that I've been talking about at the last couple of minutes or the last couple of meetings. And I just want to say that this is going to be a trial to see if we can really pull this off. It's a little bit of a heavy lift for Mary Jo, me, and some of my staff to kind of keep this going, but we're going to have more of a scheduled recruitment. And then I hope to have good reports at the next meeting. Also, last meeting, I talked about Madison being in our certified training officer program. She has graduated. And Frank, who was our lateral that returned, has already been taking on a new trainee and being really helpful. Rich recently, one of our lead dispatchers, attended DPSST Supervisor Academy and reported it to be a very beneficial experience, which is really positive because in the past, it hasn't always really benefited 911 specifically because it's a multidiscipline class, but he thought it was very useful and they've done some improvements. Bree's scheduled to attend the same in September. We are working on preparing for some upcoming community engagement events. Staffing is a tiny bit of a challenge, just getting people there, so we will be asking for volunteers from the board, and admin's going to be stepping up as well. We're planning our staff and family summer get together in August. Looking forward to that. Are there any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the technical manager's report.
Yeah, so for our radio sites, we're gathering quotes to upgrade the security system at our sites. We're still working on our evacuation kit. It's kind of gotten pushed to the background just because of everything else going on, but it's still in progress. Magix, the technical team and the change management team are investigating version 25 of CAD to get us back onto a newer release. We're looking at early next year. I think it's a little hopeful. I think there's going to be a lot of prep work going into this update, especially for the MDTs that police use and fire uses. Facility, we're getting quotes to remove trees. We have a couple dead trees that are at risk of snapping, according to some of the people we've had out here. And then just preventing damage to the roof in the future. We have some trees that grow right up against our roof. And then Microsoft 365, we're looking at our licenses and making sure that everybody has the right license that they need. So we might be adding or removing features from certain accounts to cut back on costs and make sure we have just what we need and not more. Any questions?
On those trees, Nathan, are any of them along the waterway
Yes.
that could potentially cause an erosion issue if they were gone? I mean, live trees, not dead ones.
They're not gonna be taking out the stumps. They're just gonna be cutting them off and leaving the stumps in there, so it shouldn't affect the erosion, I wouldn't think. We have one tree on the water line that's actually on Walmart's property, and we're working with them to see if they want to cover cutting down that tree because it's coming across the creek and hanging over our generator. And if for some reason that gets washed away and it falls on our generator, that's gonna be a big, big expense to get that fixed.
Have you checked with state forestry?
No, but we'll take note of
I
that.
may want to do that just because you're working in a waterway area and it's not technically logging, but nonetheless, you probably want to get some input from those folks to make sure we don't violate any fish passage issues or anything like that.
Okay.
You read my mind. I was gonna butcher the word, the riparian zone or whatever.
Riparian zone.
Riparian zone, yeah. Just either through ODF or even if the city requires us to have a permit or something to do anything back there.
Okay.
Just want to double check to make sure we're minding our P's and Q's and it's all done appropriately.
Sounds good.
And get stopped halfway through. Anything else for technical manager?
Just what I asked Brian a little earlier was, why are our parking lot lights on all during the day? I've noticed that.
It's
in a few meetings.
No, it comes up every year. It's because the sensor for those lights, just where the sun is in the sky this time of year, it's in the shade. So there's nothing we can really do to override that. Just gonna have to sit it out till the sun starts hitting that sensor again. It's actually mounted on the back of the building.
Sensor.
Yeah, actually, and there's a roof for electrical work.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If there's nothing else, we'll move on to old business. Pass the baton over to you.
That'd be me. Just another update on the Meisner site, equipment relocation phase of this project. I apologize, and I kind of alluded to the fact that I might have not know with the board that this site is operational. It's not waiting on these final operative things to be done. It's fully operational, so. We have got a co-lease agreement out to the groups that are co-leased at these sites. We've gotten back some, a little bit of questions. I think that Michael has addressed those. So we're waiting for those to be signed and we should be ready then for Day Wireless to do the final project upgrade. So any questions about that, Michael?
I can summarize the co-location license agreement for the board. If the board would like to hear, I can make it a quick summary, just exactly where we're going. And this is following the directions of the board in the past. And so the co-location license agreement, the term is 5 years and it can be renewed. The users need to migrate the equipment that they have into our shelter building or on the tower site. Day Wireless is going to handle the migration to make sure that there's no interruption of service. That's critical. Regarding maintenance, they will be allowed to do maintenance with approved vendors. For CJIS and security reasons, they have to come to the district office, get a key to go to the site, unlock the gate, go to the site, and then they return the key within 24 hours. The fee for the private users is $450 a year. And so the board should consider making a motion to approve the form of the co-location license agreement that's been presented to you in your package and to authorize the interim or acting director to sign it on behalf of the district. And the only thing we're waiting for is just some contact information. Otherwise, like for Mr. Anderson. And then we're also waiting for the insurance information and just making sure that everything is collected as needed per the agreement. So that's kind of your thumbnail sketch of the agreement. It was difficult because we have to figure out who's there using it, why are they using it, should they continue to use it, negotiating for each person or each group. So it's, yeah. So that's where we are today.
We have a question online.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Tyler. I have a question.
Sure.
So I'm apologize. I didn't see this document in the board packet that's posted online when I first looked. I would like to just ask a question about section 4 on page 3, radio frequencies, equipment relocation, and interference. So I want to clarify here again. I apologize if I'm asking a question that is in this or clarified in this document. So are each of the co-locators going to have an interference study done before their equipment is allowed on that site? Because as I read it, this is just an obligation for them to provide the list of frequencies, but it doesn't say, unless I'm missing it here, it doesn't say what the steps are. We've had a big issue with intermodulation at each of the sites where other co-locators equipment is causing interference to the 8 channels on the C901 system. So how are we going to ensure that the other co-locators at the sites frequencies and equipment are not causing interference to the district's equipment?
That's a great question. If I could answer it to the board members. So the concept here is that Day Wireless will do all migrations and do all testing and the technical aspects necessary to make sure that there is no interference. And that's why we were not going to allow other vendors to do the migration because we wanted to control it to make sure there was no interference. In fact, there's a Day Wireless representative here today. And so that's the concept, that Day Wireless will do the migration and they will be testing and making sure that there's no interference.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brian. Sorry, Rob, I think you were talking there. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, as you say, because they are a secondary non-interfering user. And I think part of it is federal, we're not ready to approve this document yet, correct? You said we're waiting for some information from Martin Anderson?
Oh, well, only his contact information. Otherwise, unless the board has suggestions or changes or modifications, it's up to the board at this point.
So if I
Before we go
may,
down
Brian,
just as a state of, for procedure purposes, if we're going to go through this document, is there a motion to approve the document?
You're just looking to get it into discussion?
Yes.
Formally? I move that we approve the co-location agreement for the Meisner site as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to move forward with the approve the co-location license agreement as presented. Yeah, sorry, I'm a procedure guy. So
No, it's
following appropriate procedure. Yes, Tyler, you had a comment.
yeah, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't
Discussion.
sure how you wanted to run that with not being officially on the board yet. Thank you for addressing that. Brian, is this so this might actually be just a district SOP type issue that needs to be reviewed when there's any sort of co-location equipment that's going up at any site. We've had extensive, as the board I think is aware, we've had extensive meetings with Ron Policoni, others, and we've shared some of these concerns in the past. And I just want to make sure that going forward that we do have an actual intermodulation study with the district's equipment and the proposed co-locator, because basically what happens is if one of those transmitters come up on the air at the same time as one of our transmitters, it will completely mute the receiver of our equipment. So it'll basically cancel out the transmission from a first responder. So it's extremely important that we have an SOP and a review And there's actually steps that are documented for each time that a co-locator wants to be at one of these sites, because it can be the difference in between life or death when it's an emergency transmission. So I just want to clarify that section 4, I see that it doesn't explicitly state that, but that might be a district policy issue that we need to address for all of the sites, just to make sure that that's not happening.
Thanks.
And that is correct, and that is the intention and why this document here was created, was to address some of those concerns that you do have. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Rob, I can't tell who you're talking to, and the audio is a little bit delayed.
No, I was just saying that is the reason for this document, for exactly the concerns that you brought up, and that each and such future agreements would have their own type of agreement.
Okay, the other question that I have is on page 3, CGIS approval. I've never heard of a radio site being under CGIS policy. As someone who does the annual CGIS and has level 4 clearance, I am very familiar with CGIS. I have no idea why a radio site would be subject to CGIS. Maybe there's a misunderstanding of what CGIS actually is and the policy around CGIS.
Well, may I answer that? Yes, thank you. There's no misunderstanding. If the tower site goes down, then obviously there's interference and interruption of service affecting C911's ability to do its job. And so it's based on our research, people can't go to the site unless they have CGIS clearance and they have a need to be there. And so we're following the CGIS policy for the sites, not just this building that we're in right now.
Right, and traditionally it would only apply to that building because that's where CGIS information is. So I'll follow up with Brian or Nathan about that, but thank you.
And it's actually, you could follow up with Nick Harris, who handles CGIS security for the Oregon State Police. He would be glad
I
to
know who
talk
Nick
with
Harris
you
is.
about that.
Yep, I have many conversations with him. Thank you.
As we discussed, I believe part of the reason for that was because this is a site. And from what you said, you did keep us well versed on the status of this project and that Meisner was up and running. It's just we had almost about a year, I don't know, about a year. We were working on this agreement for location because they didn't have money to facilitate moving their equipment over. And access, as you just said, as you mentioned, CGIS is before the Aries group, amateur radio group, had free access in and out of the shelter, which because we have 911 critical equipment in there, we wanted to address.
Correct.
And partially led to some of the CGIS.
Right, and if the board remembers, we also had a construction defect in the shelter building, which we had to resolve. But right, it's getting them to move, to pay, to migrate their equipment to the rack and power through data wireless. That was the holdup on our end, on their end.
Yep, and it slowed down the process just because as potential backup emergency partners, we didn't want to cut them off cold turkey. It was just took a while to massage to get things to work correctly so we can move. Addressing our security concerns.
Are all 5 of these users currently users? So no, nobody knew.
No, there was the county road department. I didn't appreciate that they had the equipment up there as well. So that was the scheme. And I think, this is hopefully a project that will be completed in a month or 2 or 3, but there is a possibility that if the migration of equipment for a Pacific Coast specific can be done by the time they need to be operational for that event, which I think is in August, then there might be another delay until after that event is over before we can complete migration. That's the only
And I can also offer one other thing, to close out the contract. Part of J Wireless's duty to make sure that all the other equipment is off-site. So there is a tower, a small tower, right? The poles, not even a tower, the pole that the other users have been using, and then there's an old shelter building. And so all of that has to be removed, and that was part of the original Day Wireless contract. And so they need to finish their work, and then we need to do a closeout. And then as part of the construction defect resolution, there is a set off at the end. It's in the agreement, and so we've got a little work to do to close it out, which should happen soon.
Is there any other discussion? So unless there is a motion to table, we will go ahead with the vote at this point in time. All those in favor of approving the co-location license agreement, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. Should allocate my old business here. It says permanent director recruit.
Well, let's skip over a radio upgrade project. That's okay.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's awesome.
No, keep going.
So we continue meeting with partner agencies and local government leaders, and really just an update information about what we're working on right now as far as repair, replacement, and upgrading our current system. Those meetings have been very beneficial, very productive. We have our last one today at 2 o'clock with St. Helens PD and Columbia River Fire and Rescue. And that kind of completed all of the discussions with all of the agencies that we wanted to listen to and give them some upgraded information. So that's going well. Ron Pelliconi is actually doing some modeling. He has the equipment and the know-how to go ahead and model some of the coverage of our existing tower sites and systems. So I haven't seen the results of that yet, but he says it's fairly interesting. And it's just, again, to establish kind of a baseline knowledge of what our current system is, what it used to be, and maybe if there's any degradation in the coverage, we can kind of start to identify that and understand why that is. So I think that's some important work that he's doing. We have been visiting sites. We haven't got all of them yet, but Ron, myself, Nathan have been visiting some sites. I think, it's fair to say that some of the condition and some of the work needs to be evaluated, listed of things that we need to get back to and maybe freshen up a little bit. And again, just kind of back to the baseline knowledge of what our system is. If some of those issues are not correctly, been addressed over the maintenance over years, I mean, Day Wireless has done a good job, but some of our work has been to make sure that our older out of service radios are currently working and our equipment's working. And so some of that can be reevaluated as we move forward. I did include in your packet a draft version of a technical review committee proposal. This was something that was intended to actually expedite this radio project to make sure that we're meeting on a regular basis and being able to kind of evaluate some of the priority replacement or refreshment items that we want to do. And it's in draft form, and it's just the first attempt to try to create a workable committee that's going to help with this overall project. I noticed that somehow in the header, it's, as far as draft goes, it's Columbia 911 Communications District instead of Columbia County Communications District. But anyway, just for your information, basically to kind of take a look at this. This is something that can be revised and reformatted especially with Jeremy coming in, he'll have some input on this and as well as Nathan as he's continued with this project and Ron Peliconi and any other inputs that we get from our user groups. Just take a look at that. Any questions about that? No.
No.
I did want to just kind of bring up for discussion and possibly something to be placed on the July agenda. I think that the board needs to kind of have some discussion about how we're going to carry on with this radio project. We've done a good job of collecting data, I think, and are continuing to do that to identify priority items within the infrastructure that need to be replaced. We have $4.7 million in the reserve account, which was wisely has been saved up over time for these kind of situations. And I think it would be helpful if the board was able to kind of give us an idea, a spending authority, as it were, of how much of that $4.7 million we would feel comfortable with using for the radio project. Some of these items are going to be fairly costly, but how much, when we try to finalize a priority for the first phase of replacements, how much of that do you want to retain in yours for catastrophic failures that might anticipated happen? Or how much do you feel comfortable with giving some spending authority not to exceed? Saying that there's not going to be, this is not a blank check. And it would just give us the opportunity to go out and get permanent fixed costs for some of these items, come back to the board with a proposal for each of those items that we would suggest that are done. And the board would again have to approve that process. Questions?
I guess. My only comment was gonna be on that was that. I don't know if that'd be putting the cart in front of the horse yet, but it'd be finding out what the priorities from the radio current study and to get those prices to know roughly what we're looking at, what the expenses would be. And with that, I guess comes the question of is it still looking at the console replacement? And to know how much that would be out of that 4 point whatever. Is just information I think would just need to be readily available for that meeting or for that discussion.
Yeah.
Ahead of time, being the lame duck speaking.
Well, and we have been able to cost estimate, but it's rough and it's probably on the high side, right? But we have been able to provide some guesstimates on what, based on experience and what Ron Peliconi has been able to see and others, what some of that costing would be. As an example, if we, we would quickly exceed, if we did all of the priorities in fairly quick succession, we would exceed the amount of 4.7 million easily. I mean, we're gonna have to figure out again what we are okay to spend with and want to retain in the budget. But I think that those costings would become, as long as the board wants us to move to the next stage, which is getting costing, starting in the process, it would be helpful just to kind of know what that boundary is. And this is not something, this is a lot to dump on you today, and I don't expect a decision to be made or but maybe something that could be contemplated and in July, you guys come back with a better idea of what our guidelines are.
Yes, to follow up on Brian's comments. This weighing process has to take into account the levy and the timing of the levy. I spoke with Brian previously, and I think that the boards need to consider very carefully whether it's going to go out in November, because I don't think we're ready, or nor can we be ready in November. And if Brian, we hope it's going to be the next executive director, for him to try to run a levy up to November is a huge ask. And so if, depending on the budget, the board's going to have to take into account what's the source of revenue, what, can we get a levy passed? And is it a better shot to do it in May when it's fully prepared? Brian hits the ground running.
Jeremy?
Excuse me, I said.
The other Brian.
Jeremy.
I was gonna correct that for the record. Yeah, I remember, yeah.
And Jeremy has to get on the ground running and so that's something for the board to consider because I think Brian's absolutely right. Now we get to get down to the costs and then Mickey's got to tell us what kind of money and then what's our reserve if, you know, things break because everything keeps breaking.
And that matches what my hesitation was initially about needing some good solid figures to be able to look at. Thank you, Jeremy. Any thoughts? And you'll be taking on the project?
After talking to everybody, I think the recommendation to wait makes a lot of sense. To be honest with you, I'm jumping in August 1st. Gonna have a very short period of time for me to hit the ground running and try to put together an effective process. So with the recommendation made, I would really like to push it off to the following May for to go out to the citizens. I think it makes more sense for us to be completely prepared and provide a good quality presentation to the citizens for the questions that will be asked.
I also think, Brian, that it's probably a little bit aggressive to have the meeting that you're talking about, talk about the radio system in July. It's probably needs to have Jeremy at the table and maybe also including yourself, but where was July?
Yeah.
So it just might be a little bit aggressive to try to get there before.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's just to kind of get that into the minds and we start to think about it a little bit more.
I think it's very important. I think you're right on track. Just
And, just to kind of continue with the November or the following May, I think as we kind of talked about, and Sally Jones, hi Sally. She's been very instrumental and as you know, she's ran very successful campaigns in the past for the local option. Success rate very, very high and she's done a great job. So she was gracious enough to kind of give me some advice and talk about how to plan for the next campaign, if it's in November or May. And as we kind of map it out, I agree, Michael, 4 months we'd have 4 months basically before the November election. And I just don't think that's enough time. I think for Jeremy to come in and to be able to look at all of the district business and settle in is important, as well as kind of getting further along in the radio project to show that we are doing what we intend to do, and that is upgrade our radio system. Continue with public education. I think that we've kind of increased our outreach, and I think that's important. So yeah, I think that was later on the agenda, but I think Sally, do you have anything that you want to add?
Regarding the election discussion?
Yeah.
No, I'm pleased to hear this discussion. When you think about the actual timeline, you have to register in September with the elections division that you're going to have a levy. So that's your formal filing. That's also the time that any political action committee that might support you would file their arguments. And the district has to also file an explanatory. That's the first part of September. And in order to do all the research and everything else that you need to do and talk to all of your advisory committee members, user agencies, staff, interested parties, and the general public, I don't see how that would happen before September. And once you file, you certainly can be active in doing all of those things. But the reports that you give to people as you go out, those really need to kind of be done by the end of August. They continue into September and October, of course. But if you're going to have a solid campaign, you really need to have your ducks in a row, so to speak, a couple months before it actually hits the people's homes, before the ballots hit people's homes. So, and you've got a hill to climb. The last two elections, you lost. There was only information given from one source as far as a couple of mailers. Frankly, that information was incomplete and misleading, and there was no opportunity to offset that. And that was critical to the loss. I think that we have a real opportunity to fill out the information that was provided. No criticism to the person that provided it or the information itself, but it was incomplete. And we had no opportunity to offset that with complete information. So in order to help the citizens of Columbia County understand how critical this is, how important it is, and what the downside of failing to fund it is, we need more time. Just my 2 cents.
Couple things here. I just want to back up. Thank you, Sally. The first one is this started with discussion of maybe saying have on the agenda for July to discuss this. And we kind of went down to the local option levy thing if when. First question I have is just because if you're talking about putting this on the July's agenda is if not doing it in November and instead potentially May, is that going to send the potential collections back another taxing year?
Yeah.
So I just want to point that out so that if there is discussion in July, that that's factored into when you say, what are we looking to spend right now? Because that means there's going to be less reserve funds, at least for another year, or the ability to put additional funds back into the reserve for another year.
Part of the consideration, yeah.
So I just want to make sure that's on the radar when that discussion does take place in July, since I won't be here.
Well, I think it's important that Mickey tells the board if you're gonna not get revenue in for another year, right? What is that gonna do to your reserve fund? How much are you gonna have left? And so if it's gonna be put on July or maybe it's August, I don't, that's up to the board, but bottom line is Mickey needs to, as part of that, have a report. What does it look like on, how much of those reserve funds are going to be drawn down for operations?
100% agree, and that's why if I was sitting here in July, that's something I would like to have information for, and I don't know about the rest of the board, but I believe that would be very useful in having that discussion. The next question is we kind of went down towards talking about local option levy, when to do it, when not to do it. This may be premature or not, but there was a previous motion done a couple months ago to go out in November. Do we want to let that stand, or are we gonna have discussions of reconsidering that today? Pleasure of the board.
I think there's more information to be had before that would be changed. I think that Sally is exactly right on point on the timing of that, and I agree, but I don't know that it's imperative that we change our motion or do anything today on November versus some other time. I mean, that certainly could happen after the new board is seated and those discussions that Brian describes are had, but I don't know that it's imperative to change that today. I mean, happy to vote on it if somebody wants to put a motion on the floor, but
Well, I think we should put a motion on the board. I think we should change it to May because it makes no sense to do it in November because we're not gonna be ready, so why not just get that done with?
why not just make a motion?
Well, I'll say, is there a motion on the table?
I make a motion that we move the election to May. I'm not sure that's the wording I need to use.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to change the date for the proposed going out for local option levy from this November to May.
Thank you.
Okay,
That's what I meant to say.
now for discussion, Nathan, were you?
Tyler Miller.
Yeah, Tyler, go ahead.
I just have a question really quick. And Rob, I think it goes back to the comment that you had about when funding actually would hit. If you do it, if you go out in May, does it, again, this is not knowing when the actual tax revenues hit, would it make more sense even to wait till November if that doesn't delay the revenue? And the reason is because you get better voter turnout in November.
Correct. I think if the May versus November, and well, this discussion can take place in the future, I guess, because there's plenty of time before May. But I do believe if it went in May, there may be a chance for it to hit for the taxing year. If it's in November, it would have to go into the next fiscal year. So,
Okay.
so if we waited, if it went in May, it'd come in a year sooner versus November.
Got it.
Of the same
Okay,
calendar
thank you.
year.
Yeah, I was just my only point being that if the funding would actually hit at the same time, whether it be May or November would probably be a better election just because there's better voter turnout.
All right, any other questions or comments? We have a motion on the table. All of those in favor of ending our previous actions for going out for a local option levy from November to May, say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. Nothing else. We kind of segue there off of radio, but
Yeah, we
are we
kinda
still
got
on
through it.
radio or are we on the?
The only things I had, the executive director of recruitment, we did have to cross off the recruitment. We're not recruiting anymore, right?
I don't have you signed the dotted line yet?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, it's
Staring at it. Yeah.
No time to run.
So anyway, the only update on that is Jeremy still has his medical assessment to pass, but that's the end of it. And I expect August 1st. That's, everything works out well.
We have to vote on this employment agreement.
Yes, it's coming up later.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
I can't find it on my.
I know. I think it's probably after the executive session. It's going to be happen.
Public outreach, education is going well. Kirby's still doing a fantastic job if you're looking and seeing what she's posting. We do have some, I think, some events coming up. I think the fair is coming up in July that we'll have a presence at. Some other additional fairs in the future. And then that's it for that, unless anybody has any other questions.
All right. Hearing none, is there any other old business? We'll move on to new business. Excuse me. First one is a resolution 25-05, verifying and accepting board of directors election results.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the election results as presented by the county.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to accept the 25-05, verify the county election results for the director's positions. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, moves on to resolution 25-06, declaration of emergency.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve resolution 25-06, declaration of emergency to repair the building.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 25-06, declaration of an emergency. Discussion. And I'd say,
I was gonna say, do we have any updates?
yes, again, I was gonna ask just for state of record and information. Can we get a brief little surmises of what the declaration of emergency is? I guess there's the document on the record, but just.
Oh, the declaration of emergency is the unfortunate roof situation that allowed a water event that flooded parts of the inside of the building. We have a temporary patch on the roof. And we're going out to bid this week to get a contract to get over here ASAP to either, per the board's desires, to either to bid the repair as the engineers have and per their specifications, or to replace the roof. And so that is in the works, and hopefully we'll have an answer soon.
Henry, yeah, you into that, sir.
No, that was judged basically to get it on the record for folks
Yes.
that haven't paid attention to the last few meetings. Or we're talking about.
And I will say that the Premier did an excellent job. They were timely. They were efficient. They came in under the bid. That's the way it should happen. And also great job staff to working with Premier to work around the remediation inside the building. And again, getting all of the contractor employees to CGIS approved and escorted. And I mean, it went really well. And the staff has worked really hard to get this done on the inside of the building. And now we just have to now get the roof fixed. And we've got 3-month window while the weather holds.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Right, and it looks like here, unless you have anything else prior to it, we will enter executive session here under ORS 192660 subsection 2A and 192660 subsection 7, employment of public officers, employees, and agents, along with ORS 192660 Council of Legal Counsel, and 192660 discussion about security. And we will enter executive session here at 09:53. Tabitha's iPhone. Got it.
I was wondering.
Someone's keeping.
Vested interest.
You-
Vested interest.
Plus, no one you can pick you up.
All right, let's give a couple moments here for anyone to see that the lobby is back open.
She really just wants to know if we're gonna pay him for this kid.
Just wants to make sure I'm not hiding any money.
Focus the camera on you for the rest of the meeting.
All right, you have the recorder back on? Yes, lobby's back up and open. All right, so the executive session was over at 11:26. There was a 10-minute break for restrooms. And we are resuming ordinary session here at 11:36. All right. And we're back to the under new business. Is there additional business?
If you'd like, I'd like to address the executive director employment agreement.
Yes.
Michelle Hennessy and myself and our attorney met a week and a half ago and went over a proposed employment agreement for our new relationship with Jeremy Hypes, and came up to a what we felt was a fair package that was presented to Jeremy. And my understanding is that has come back with the agreement that is in the minutes or in the meeting packet today. And with that, I would like to move that the district approves the executive director employment agreement as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Shelley is seconded.
Do you have a request for comment online?
But we have, it's been moved and seconded to approve B, Executive Director Employment as presented. Discussion. That's fine. None. We will, because this is related to the executive director and it's been open so far up to that. We'll go ahead and do the question, Lisa, that's presented.
Thank you, Chair. This is Tyler Miller again. So
Yes,
first, I wasn't able to review the co-location agreement, executive director employment agreement, or the declaration of emergency resolution for the board meeting in advance. Those 3 docs were uploaded this morning from what I can tell. I have read through the materials posted a few days ago, so please bear with me if I'm missing something. I had to review these quickly during the meeting. I flagged a few things in the proposed executive director employment agreement I would like to share for consideration. I'm trying to be mindful that this is an agreement and a new relationship that Mark Pacheco and I will also be involved in managing, hopefully for several years. So it's important the relevant board members have input on the agreement. Just to get some context, I've worked with the city attorney in the past related to employment terms and agreements for city manager, and working together, we were able to come up with really comprehensive and fair language. Some of the things I advocated for to be added to these agreements in the past have turned into benefiting the city's interest. I'll start with section 2.2 of the proposed employment agreement. It provides a severance for resignation and good standing. So I read this as if the executive director were to resign for a new job, say for a different PSAP or 901 center, the district has to pay the wages which are under the current agreement, $11,250 per month, plus payroll taxes, plus all the other benefits described in section 2.2E, which includes costly fringe benefits. I don't think the district and therefore the taxpayer should be paying severance in the event of a resignation. Resignation is the employee's choice to leave, and if in good standing, it would be likely for a different job, and that kind of contradicts the whole underlying reason of severance in general. So again, the way I read that is that if the executive director just decides to resign, say for another job, we have to pay him severance. I have never seen an agreement include that. Section 2.2E, what expenses do all the fringe benefits amount to? So so there's a clear understanding of what they are going to cost the district and taxpayers. Section 3, general expenses. I think this should clearly say it's for reasonable expenses that are directly related to district business. Otherwise, it may fall within a taxable benefit. The Oregon Government Ethics Commission just recently released some findings that relate to my point here. I don't think that non-personal and generally job-related, and those are in quotes because that's what the agreement says, is appropriate language at all, especially given the OGEC's recent opinion. I also don't agree that any position within a public entity using public funds should be exempt from daily per diem limits as set by the U.S. Government Service Administration schedule. So just for context in there, there's a term that says that the per diem limits are not applicable to the executive director. I don't understand why we wouldn't be following per diem limits on the executive director. That's I don't know. I just don't think that that's the right thing to do with public funds here. Section 4, the executive director is an exempt position. I think the language and what I have seen in other similar agreements is that work hours per week will be a minimum of 40 hours, not an average. So right now, section 4 currently says that he will average 40 hours per week. In the other agreements that I've been involved in negotiating for, government executives, they all say, because they're exempt, a minimum of 40 hours. Section 5, I think all of these items should be prefaced with provided that they are budgeted for in the fiscal year budget. If the director has a spending account or benefit of some type, they need to be listed in the annual budget document so the purpose of the annual budget process is fully met and the public can see these line items and what's allocated to them. I think there should also be max limits set for these expenses, such as dues and subscriptions. So just for context, under dues and subscriptions, they're included in there. There's no limit. So, I mean, technically he can go and subscribe for as many different publications, memberships, whatever. And it's basically obligating the district to pay for all those with no sort of oversight or context as to what those should be or what they should be limited to. 5D, for the example, imposes an obligation on the district's budget with no limit for the director's professional development. We also need to be mindful that our director needs to be present and attending to district operations and not hitting up every professional development opportunity possible at the district and taxpayer expense. I've actually seen that where we have negotiated different employment agreements with executives and we encourage their professional development, which we do. But that's kind of been abused, and they haven't been present to attend to the daily actual business operations. So I think that should be, or could be at least clarified a little bit. I just think there needs to be some guardrails here showing that we are being very thoughtful with this agreement. Section 7.3, board communication with director. This is speaking to the actions of board members and not the director, so it's not appropriate to be in this employment agreement. I think it is also problematic to try to limit communication, association, and speech of a board member who was elected by the voters. It's also inappropriate to include language that requires board members to seek consult with legal counsel before talking to the executive director. That's just creating barriers and problems. This is a ridiculous barrier to good governance, good relationships, the overall purpose of having multiple board members. For the city of Scappoose, for example, we encourage one-on-one meetings with and between councilor and city managers to help build relationships and representation to the public. But it's clear any official action has to come from the majority of council. 7.3 introduces a lot of problems and potential conflict and isn't appropriate since it's not an actual term related to the director's conduct or employment. This is something we can discuss and collaborate on as a board when we do our next review of the district policies, and it's a board and policy matter, not a term appropriate for the executive director's employment agreement. 9.3, I would ask for more research on this. I don't believe you can actually, I did follow up on that, so you can strike my 9.3 comment. I know that's a lot, and I know you guys put a lot of time on this, so I apologize. I'm not trying to derail your efforts, and I applaud Henry and Shelley for working on this. Just, as we have found working through, for example, the city manager hirings too, everybody has something to contribute, and it's hard to catch everything when you're going through these processes. And, different people's experiences can add a lot to, trying to get really good agreements and foster really good relationships with their, incoming management staff. So thank you.
All right. I can respond just briefly. The employment attorney, Heather Van Meter, has reviewed this agreement and just made a couple of changes. So I respect and appreciate Mr. Miller's comments. And this was a negotiated agreement to bring Jeremy here. And so, some terms could be different, but this is the agreement that's been negotiated that's now before the board.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I don't think I caught Jeff's vote.
That was an aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Next on the agenda, agenda items for the. Yes, yeah. Agenda items for the July 24th meeting. I believe they're due to a recent event. There has been a security concern that was brought up. And with that, there was looking into our policies and found that we need to be a little bit more in alignment with CJIS. And due to that, the staff has been directed, or the recommendation is for staff to be directed to suspend at least the board members' access cards currently until this, and to review the policy, which will be on the agenda and to be discussed at the July 24th meeting.
For the August meeting, depending on how soon.
Correct.
The security SOP gets to be redrafted to comply with current CJIS policy.
Correct. So it'll be on the July 24th or the July meeting. If everything's ready, if tabled for the next one. If we don't, staff does not have the materials.
I think it's important to note that the last time the district facility security document was updated was 2017. And with these most recent events that have happened here, it's high time that we put some energy into that.
And this will give our new executive director a chance to be part of the process. Are there any other agenda items for the July meeting? I'll just start with that. Other than that, it is customary to kind of at least try to see if we will have a quorum for the 24th, to see if that date is still good.
I'll be here.
Yeah, I'm good.
You won't be,
No, I won't be here.
Shelley?
I will be available.
Jeff?
Jeff
Yes, I'm good.
and Tyler.
Sorry, I was typing an email. I missed part of that.
Oh, we are just at the point where we are looking at the July 24th date to ensure there will be a quorum.
Thanks, Rob. Hold on, let me just look at my calendar here real quick.
And is Mark still in there in the chat?
Negative.
Okay,
Yep, I'm good for the 24th. Thanks.
okay. So it's like the 24th is going to be a good date. The other thing is Sally Jones is here in the audience and she unfortunately did not make it here in time. And stated she would like to have public comment. And so we're going to go ahead and allow Sally her 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Oh, yeah, it's a
Well, that's me, right?
Yeah, since that was a change.
Three that know me. I know it's been a long meeting, a long day, but I didn't want to miss the opportunity to say a couple of heartfelt thank yous. One is to Brian for coming multiple times to the support of this district. And most recently, it's very much appreciated by this citizen. And also as a former administrator, now called executive director here, I just want to thank Henry and Rob. Henry and Rob are here from the beginning, 35, almost from the beginning, not quite, but almost. And we're part of that, have been part of this district's 35-year history. From the beginning, it was building from the ground up. And yet, from the beginning, and it's never lost sight of the priority focus, which is on the service to our citizens. Then the support of our operational staff, our dispatchers, along with the first responders that we send to the calls that come from our citizens. That's always been the priority focus. And though it seems like it's a no-brainer, of course, that's what we do, right? Sometimes government entities forget their priority focus. Sometimes it becomes personal agendas or it becomes other interests. But this board has never forgotten that, and neither has the advisory committee. Every member of the advisory committee, every police chief, every fire chief, every medic, everyone that represented those agencies, and every single member of this board and budget committee have always kept that focus and have always only taken action as a body and respected that Oregon ethic of you have a voice, that you should speak out when you're a member of a board or an advisory committee. But when the final decision is made, that is your decision too, and you move forward. And I really appreciate that. Both of you have been there for all that history. We also have had always this continual focus, not only on our priorities, but that we will deliver quality with efficiency, transparency. One of the first goals of the very first budget document was that it would be transparent. Anybody could pick up our budget document and understand where every single penny went, understood why. And that's followed through again for 35 years, and it will continue. Putting out information to the public that is transparent so that people can understand how their money is being spent. In the past, we have spent a lot of time going out and talking to groups and explaining that. not just when we needed to get a levy passed, but when and we would come back and say, okay, we promised that this is what we were going to do, and we did it. And this is what we promised, and this is how we did it, and this is how we spent the money. And that happened on a regular basis. With a lot of turnover in the last 15 years or so, some of that regular contact with the public has been dropped. And I am so glad to hear that there is a renewed focus on the part of this district to do that. It's the district's responsibility to report back to their voters, their users, and act in a public fashion. And I'm so happy to hear that's a renewed focus. And I personally thank you for that as a citizen. Anyway, I don't want to go on and on because I certainly could. But I just want really, bottom line is to say thank you, Brian, and especially Rob and Henry for your very long years of service and dedication to 911 in Columbia County.
You gave us a good roadmap to follow.
Your way is up. Always.
Thank you. All right. There's no other business. We'll move on to member comments. Jeff, we'll start with you.
Just echo on what was already said, and thanks to Brian for leading the ship here until we could get Jeremy on board, and then Rob and Henry. It's already been said, so greatly appreciated everything you guys have done, and you guys might be hearing from me, question about, hey, how did we do this, or what did we do that, or those kind of questions. So anyway, yeah, greatly appreciated. Thank you, guys.
Mr. President,
Yes.
do we need to make a motion about the interim?
Oh, yes. We do.
Interim.
Well, Jeremy is not going to start August 1st. And so it is Brian Burright's last day. So we need the board to empower staff member, and I believe Nathan is the person that, it's not for me to say, but I think that he's the next in line, so to speak, to be interim director for the next 30 days.
You're willing to hang around, Brian? I didn't realize your gig was up today.
Yes, it is. It is.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention.
And thanks for being willing to do that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move that we appoint Nathan to be our interim director, or not director, what are we talking?
Executive director.
For the next 30 days until Jeremy comes on board.
It has been moved and seconded to appoint Nathan as interim executive director until Jeremy starts.
So can I make a request to the board for the next 30 days?
Probably not.
Executive director thing.
What?
Let's move on to discussion.
Oh,
Go.
sorry.
What'd you say?
My request would be to have the salary that was negotiated in Jeremy's contract for those 30 days. Never hurts to ask.
What our policies been or anything else on that.
Well, the thought to be Jeremy's, or at least what Brian's has been.
That's what I would say, is that it follows what we've been doing with Brian.
Things go ahead.
No, I'm not saying, I just looked your way.
As it's continuing the interim role, would not have any issues with just following with what Brian has. I don't know what the difference is from your current with that. Do we know?
35, I believe.
3,500,
Thousand.
Thousand.
not in 1 month.
Oh, no. I mean, if you want.
Yeah. Do you have exact numbers so that the board can be specific about it?
I don't. I'd have to go to Mickey to get the exact number.
I can go get that if you desire.
Pleasure of the board, do we
Or
need?
the board can just say,
Yeah.
Mickey, do you have the ability to say, if the board said, we're appointing Nathan as the interim executive director at the same salary for 1 month as Brian Burright. And if they said that to you, do you have an exact number?
On my computer, yes, I can get that.
Okay.
And you
So,
want gross, not net?
well, do the board want to know that number or do the board want to pass a resolution? You'd have to make a new motion or amend the motion.
Pleasure of the board, do you want more information?
Okay. What do you want to do?
I think he needs to, for the 30 days that he's put in that position, that he gets the same salary that Brian was getting.
So
I'm making that a motion.
are you amending my motion?
No,
Oh, okay.
I'm seconding your
Okay.
motion.
Mary Jo, do you have that down?
I,
Probably not.
it is a little all over the place,
So-
but.
So do we hear, Henry has a motion to appoint Nathan as the interim director and Shelley is asking Henry to amend that motion to include salary at the same level as Brian Burright. Do you accept the amendment?
I'm happy to accept that friendly amendment.
And now we need a second, ladies and gentlemen.
So there's an amendment on the motion as stated. All those in favor of the amendment or for discussion on the amendment?
There has to be a second still.
So I thought Shelley.
Okay, okay, perfect.
So speaking, first, just deal with the amendment, which clarifies the initial motion. Any discussion?
Make a comment? Is that out of order?
It is, but it's the chair's prerogative.
Go for it.
Well, I assume that the contract that Brian has and that Jeremy has reflects their years of expertise that they offered to the district. And I'm assuming that your willingness to compensate Nathan at the same level is commensurate. I mean, I don't know, Nathan, nothing against you,
Oh, I
but
understand.
procedurally, and this does set precedent. Does Nathan's background, does he have the background and expertise at the level that you would appoint him at the same level that you appointed Brian Burright? If he does,
I would
then
say yes.
that's okay. So you're setting precedents and I'm just,
I guess my comment would
I'm a
be,
procedural geek.
they were both up for the position and we chose Jeremy, but Nathan was right there. So I would say yes.
And for sake of clarification, because as coming up at last minute here, this is something that I had potentially overlooked and I don't know, because it was missing it wasn't on the agenda, if it was unfortunately just not caught. This isn't the standard procedure where we're just rolling back to the number 2 person taking over for X amount of time. Which would be the normal procedure in a short leave period. But your contract's up. Yeah, that was not caught until, brought to our attention until today, at least. And this is the path that we're using to move forward for this one instance, correct? Is the intention?
I think that's good to have on the record. Thank you.
All right. So although, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor on the amendment to the motion, say aye.
All right.
Opposed? And back to the motion itself, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And Jeff, I didn't think, all right, are those opposed? Okay. Passes. Any other new business? Going back to member comments. I think we're Shelley, you're up.
I have been blessed to work with both of you two for sure. Brian, I thank you for stepping in when we needed you so badly. Thank you for Henry for having that connection, but I can't say enough of the knowledge that I've learned from the two of you and have so much more to learn from you. Hopefully you'll be not far away.
No, you can call any old time.
Right.
Yeah, I'll echo everything that's already been said. Short time on the board here, but Brian, it's been a pleasure to work with you. You provided some good insight for me. Henry, as well to you, pleasure. And same to you, Rob. It's been a pleasure working with you, and hopefully I echo the same as Shelley. If I need anything, don't be surprised if you see an odd number calling you for questions.
Thank you.
Oh. Well, thanks to staff. That's made our lives easier for years and years and years and years. And thanks to Shelley for saying yes when I phoned her up to fill a position here. And as many other folks have had that phone call, and now most people don't even answer my calls because of those requests when I make them. But it's been a pleasure. I've been on this board for 32 years, Mary Jo. And it's very, very good. You guys will love Mark Pacheco. I worked with him. I hired him at the county. He is our public information officer down there and works in the commissioner's office, and great guy. He's never been in a position like this before, so he's got a lot to learn, but he's got a really, really good head on his shoulders. And I feel very blessed in leaving this position to someone like Mark. Or Mark Kreitzer, if he would have won, either one would have been great. So, privilege there. But anyway, been great having you at the helm, Rob, for all this time. I appreciate you over the last couple of years being the chair and retaining the chair as we've gone through some difficult times. So anyway, been my pleasure, been my privilege to serve. So thank you.
And which brings that down to me. But it's been a pleasure to serve on the board. It's been great. It's nice to see Sally back there because she was here when I was, if you ever look at that photo, I actually had hair at one point.
Yeah, me too.
But no, and I've seen the board has changed from that time. I mean, we used to have super long meetings with a lot less discussions of topics of items because there was always a feeling of there was a consensus, almost a majority all the time. And seeing the board has continued to grow, and using Henry's example, there are definitely times where we do not agree on things. But the most important thing is we agree that we both have the right to disagree, and we respect each other's decision, and we move forward with whatever the majority is. And we continue to move forward as a board, as a unified front, even if that was not our way. The past couple of years being in this position, I have not voted unless we for tiebreakers. And I have not always been with the majority, but we've moved forward. And I think that's very important that we remember that we act as a group. The other thing is, this is an exciting time for the agency. I wish you well. I believe you have a great plan now that we've solidified that we are having to work on the VHF system and bring it back and improve upon it. We have a great team, including our new executive director has experience, and I'm glad you are here to be at the start of it. It's very important that it does not move forward without you and you come afterwards. I think you've reached out, and there's been a great process that we have with Polo-County. And I'm looking at the board members, and some have some experience, some don't, or in the past have had experience. And I think this is something that is going to be well within your guys' wheelhouse. You want to say something else? Go for it real quick.
I just wanted to congratulate Jeremy for coming on board. Looking forward to getting to know you and working with.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the confidence and willingness to bring me on. I have a great group of people that I'll be able to rely on in this room as well as in dispatch to help move us forward. So I look forward to the opportunities and chances to face some of our challenges we have ahead of us.
So thanks for cutting me off from rambling. No, it's been great. I believe you will be in good hands. You have people who are taking the positions who do truly have interest in their roles and being appropriately as a board member. So with that, I will go ahead and adjourn at 12:08.
Wow, that's the longest meeting we've had in years. huh?
You know,